Greetings from Atolia, I'm the Lord Bones. IMO, Loren the Amazon Princess. Loren the Amazon Princess is a story-orientated RPG with a menu-based combat system. It was released in April 2012, came onto Steam on the 14th of January, and by a studio called Winter Wolves. So firstly, we're going to have to talk about the version on PC, which seems to have a few little issues with the options menu. Firstly, it runs on Ren Prime. For some reason, the version of DirectX that I have didn't sit well with the game, complaining at me. There are also no resolution options. All you get is windowed and full screen. The windowed isn't 16:9 either. This is the entirety of the options menu, which for a 2D game, all I really want is resolution options. That's it. So I'm going to go straight into the game now. Okay, so here I am actually playing the game, and this here is the world map screen. Now, for the most part, this game is about story, and here you can just see the camp of all my heroes here that I've collected. This is quite far into the game, but this way you won't see any vital story elements. So if I go over here and talk to this guy, and I'll just skip through most of this text while I talk over it. The story for I is very, very typical. But the story itself isn't actually that bad. It seems much more like the lore books for World of Warcraft or Lord of the Rings and things like that. It mentions a twist in the Steam page as well. And I've guessed every single twist so far, apart from the very end one, which I don't really consider to be a twist. So unless you are a little bit brain dead or young, I suppose, you might not be able to get all these twists. A main problem with the story, apart from the sheer volume, as you can see from your bottom bar, it takes up a great portion of the actual game, is the fact that in certain parts it feels more like a dating simulation and seems to mention things that it doesn't really need to mention. Also, by the way, you get options like these here, because this also makes you feel like it's a dating simulation as well. So I can answer this person now with a joking, friendly or forceful. Now I've actually gone through and saved at this point and played through all of them. They don't really seem to have that much of an impact with normal people at the camp. Later on down the line, they do seem to have better impacts in the case of people storming off or you getting more control over somebody later on. But for the most part, I would say this whole choice system isn't exactly breaking the bank on a choice-based simulation. So I'm going to choose forceful. I wasn't really reading what it actually said. With that in mind, the story goes on for so long that I wouldn't be able to recommend this game to somebody that wasn't looking for something that was more like a lore book, because there's so much story. Okay, I'm going to go down here and go to train with the barista. Yes, that's how you say it. And start a battle so I can show you. Now, the battles work in a back row, front row sort of system, in which melee attacks can only be performed when the front row is actually defeated. Now I'm going to choose her and him to battle with this person I'm going to be training with. So here and now I can't hit him with the melee attack unless all the front row are defeated. So it generally means you stick archers and wizards at the back, and you stick people that have a lot more health at the front. Now the battles are pretty standard for a menu based system. You just sort of click and it tells you exactly how much you're going to be hitting them for. And the only one that has anything very different is the mages, which have things like a low tax that attack a single row, which I'll show you now. I could probably defeat most of this line if I choose that one. Now, mages are overpowered if you haven't noticed. And the game really likes you to use characters that are really underpowered during the actual story campaign. That is completely infuriating, to be honest with you. Now, the skill tree that comes behind all of this, just to add to the skills and attacks and things, is very nice, but the problem is you don't end up using it very often, partly because mages are overpowered, partly because most battles can be fought just by hitting the enemy hard enough. So here is the skill tree here for Eleanor, who's just leveled up. Now it has an alto assigned down here, in which you can just ask it to figure out what it thinks you should actually have in, and then you actually have two different menus here for the actual skill tree itself. So if I actually go into here, you only have one passive ability, and then you have a bunch of non-passive abilities. For some reason the hero just seems to have like healing abilities and things along that nature. No idea why, but the other people do actually have a lot more to offer. That just automatically put, I think, in that one there just fine. I generally used auto assign because the only way I defeated the battles was literally just to run into everyone. And you also seem to gain quite a few items and a lot of money just before the fact that the management, which is one of the sections of the bottom bar, if you notice here that these items here are relatively underpriced with what you get at the very end of the game. I didn't spend any of the time actually buying any item apart from the very beginning and the very end of the actual game. The moment it opened up and the moment it was about to close, and my items were still fine. I wasn't exactly the best person in the world with every single person, but most of my items were perfectly suitable of going through and defeating the final people. So if you go through here, by the way, let's just talk about the general mechanics of the management system before I continue. If I highlight, let's for example highlight this dwarf over here, he generally has a two-handed item here. If I close this, it will now compare what he has in his hands on the right hand side there with what I could end up buying. So this sort of upgrade system over here proved to be pretty useless for me personally. It doesn't matter too much because you don't really end up needing it, and it doesn't take up that much time going around the entire world and finding other items. So, let's have a conclusion, shall we? I did enjoy playing Loren the Amazon Princess, however I can only recommend it to people that like reading game lore or epic novels. The game is by far about the story choices than anything else. Loren the Amazon Princess is on Steam for $20 or £14.99, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.